So, welcome back to episode 4 of the Half and Half Scarf football podcast with me, Nick, and my mate Dom. As you might know already, we're two football mates who met at the Riverside Stadium, regularly watching Middlesbrough and building up a random friendship that's since taken in many, many trips to the likes of Dortmund, Budapest, and all over England. We're actually going to Rangers in Scotland together on Saturday as we record this on the Friday beforehand. Dom is also a season ticket holder at Everton, so he's very much the 50-50 supporting guy, but reality is he would never be seen dead in a half and half scarf because everything that we think might just be wrong with football. So without further ado, what are we talking about on episode 4? Well, we're talking about technology and rule changes, and then we're going to shift it in the second half to something completely different, and it's based on kind of what PSG have done really well this year. We're going to talk about Galacticos and ask the question, Galacticos, are they all that? So we hope you enjoy this episode of the Half and Half Scarf Football Podcast. And without further ado, we'll welcome back Dom. Dom, nice to see you again, mate.
And you, Nick, nice to be here. Can't believe we're on episode 4 already and lots to talk about. Let's get stuck in.
Excellent. Well, we always talk about the choice of shirt, don't we, really? So you've got what
Yeah,
I believe is your favourite ever Middlesbrough shirt.
it is 78-79 season. Absolute classic. Before sponsors really kicked in. It's an Adidas shirt. Very simple. It's got the white band, classic Middlesbrough badge on
Yeah.
there. And it's unusual, mate, in that on this one, the white band went all the way around the shirt,
Mm.
which, as we were briefly talking in I think our first podcast, what makes a shirt unique or changing things, the band going all the way around.
Yeah.
Don't think it's ever been done since.
Well, I've gone just merch today. I've gone with a new Middlesbrough t-shirt, and it's just something I've picked up this week. It's a nice bit of quality, and I quite like it just in terms of merch. I can wear my colours with pride without wearing my colours sometimes, which is good. So anyway, without further ado, let's talk about the thing that probably annoys more football fans than anything else, and it's technology. And also I've added into this a bit of rule change, really. So the context of this is, for time immemorial, referees have always got abuse, haven't they? They've always been, before technology, before VAR, before goal line technology, referees were always abused for being, rubbish, stupid, getting it wrong, blind, should have gone to spec savers, all that kind of stuff. Question I've got is, has technology changed any of that abuse towards referees?
No, very quickly. I think they get a tough rap, referees. I mean, as two people who go at the game, you can get caught up in the emotion of the game, and sometimes you are convinced that the referee's made an appalling decision, and then you watch it back at home on the playback, and you actually look at it and go, "Yeah, that was the right call." But I think sometimes, particularly with modern technology now, I think sometimes they're reluctant to make a decision
Hmm.
because they know that VAR will kick in. But then actually sometimes they make a perfectly good decision, and then it's bizarrely overruled by VAR, or they get drawn into looking at VAR and overrule something when actually their first decision was correct.
Well, we'll look at VAR in a bit more detail shortly because I want to start with the the first piece, really, the advent of goal line technology, and I'll put my cards on the table right now. I'm a massive fan of goal line technology. I think it's the thing that we should have stopped at. To be fair, I think goal line technology is a really good advent, and I think it came about for a couple of reasons. One, Chelsea fans will tell you it was the Liverpool versus Chelsea, ghost goal in the Champions League semi-final. But really, the Lampard goal for England against Germany was just absolutely disgraceful. And I've never liked Manuel Neuer, but I've liked him even less since that day. Clearly, I mean, he was just doing what anyone else would do, but that was 10 feet over the line. Really, it almost hit the back of the net before it bounced out. And goal line technology had to come in, and I'm a fan. But it can still be fallible, can't it?
I think it can. Yeah, I think it can. There's been a couple of occasions where I think it's been questionable, and the ball has crossed the line, and the referee hasn't had their magic beep on their watch.
Mm.
Um, but I would ultimately agree with you. I think of all the things that needed to come in, that's absolutely brilliant. Glad it came in after the '66 World Cup, though, mate. To be honest. But and me and you have been to the Dortmund Museum, and they've got a wonderful little piece there, a camera shot, which actually does erringly look like it didn't cross the line. But we quietly walk away from that one when we're there, don't we? So
Well, the thing with the Dortmund Museum is it's got a little piece. It's an interactive piece. It said, "Did the ball cross the line? Yes or no?" And
yeah,
me and you and Rob stood there for 10 minutes pressing yes, yes, yes,
just
yes, yes,
pressing
yes, yes.
yes, yeah, and we had these German fans just looking at us in absolute sadness, thinking, "Yeah, is
Yeah.
this what it comes to?" But in all seriousness, yeah, that's a great bit of kit. Um, you enlighten me on some of the issues where it hasn't quite worked.
Well,
I
there's
think you,
been the big one, which springs to mind is Villa were playing Sheffield United at the back end of a particular season, both in the relegation battle, and there was what could only be described as a long ball to the back post for Sheffield United. It was a melee at the back post. Keeper tripped over, fell backwards. Three defenders sort of all trying to get at the ball, and it was right next to the post. And because it was right next to the post, there was three players and a goalkeeper, and just like that classic Sunday morning sort of park, trying to get at it. The ball clearly went into the side net inside the goal for Sheffield United, but the thing didn't beat because it was covered by players and just this melee of bodies. And all I'd say is it didn't get given. Villa actually stayed up, I think, on goal difference or by a point that season, and
it
Sheffield
is.
United went down. So okay, that's one in a zillion incidents, and you'd accept that was kind of just a problem, but you wouldn't accept it if you Sheffield United, would you? Because
No.
what trajectory could Villa or Sheffield United have been on today if that had worked properly? So it is fallible, and I liken it to what happened at Wimbledon at the tennis this year. Really, they had AI instead of line judges this time for the first time ever, which is brilliant potentially, except a human forgot to switch the system on. So for one of the games, the AI line judges didn't work. So if you're going to use technology, just make sure someone knows where the on and off switch
On
is.
and off switches, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
It's a
So
hard one, that isn't it? Because it was obviously in place. It does its job really well. That I remember that situation now, and it was an unusual coming together of events, wasn't it? It's
mm,
quite unusual that you'd get all those players all entrenched together on the goal line like that.
mm,
Does question though, why did it? I take it the sensors looked down on it, so
yeah.
couldn't see it. But I also thought it looked across it as well. So could it not have looked across the ball to see it was actually in the side netting? I don't know. That's where your fourth official maybe has to be close to the action. But would you not just put it down to, although it's horrendous in terms of the after effects for Sheffield United, would you just put that down to what football is, which is errors are made and you own up to them? Yes, it can have catastrophic effects, but what else are you supposed to do? Admit that something's not perfect, which ultimately everything isn't perfect, is it?
No, my observation would be a liner wouldn't have spotted it, the ref wouldn't have spotted it, so and the
Yeah,
line technology didn't spot it. So ultimately, they were probably no worse off, although they probably felt massively aggrieved, quite rightly.
yeah.
Don't even get me on the fourth official. What that? Don't right like not. We're not even gonna. We could do a whole episode of the fourth official, although it wouldn't take long. Would be describing their job description.
I know it's frustrating as to. I mean, yeah, my biggest bugbear at Everton, where we sit, is the managers always stand out in their little boxes,
Hmm.
and basically where we sit, it just entirely blocks the view in the first half towards the park end, and the fourth officials are supposed to actually rein them back in to stand within their boxes, or they're only supposed to have one out at any one time.
Hmm.
They don't enforce it. It's so infuriating, and they just stand there getting in the way. Ridiculous.
It'd be much worse when Newcastle come because Tyndall will be there, won't he? Just as close up Eddie Howe's backside as he could be. So you've got
Oh,
two to contend with there, haven't you?
it's just embarrassing watching him. We had a where we all sit. We all watched him close up season before last, and it was really embarrassing watching him. So Eddie Howe would come out and do something, sometimes even as much as a gesture to a player.
Hmm.
And 2 seconds later, he'd come out and copy him, almost like he felt that he needed to do exactly the same. And people were just screaming at him, like, what value did that serve there, Jason? Please Please tell us. And when he's there together with him, he literally stands so close to him. It's like they're glued together. It's
Yeah.
almost like, let me be the manager, please. I'm the manager as well. I'm the co-manager. Please let me on the telly.
Well, without going into a rant about Jason Tyndall, if he was made of chocolate, he'd eat himself, wouldn't he? But let's move on
Yes.
from that. We're talking about technology, okay? As I said earlier, I would have stopped at goal line technology. I would have said that's improved the game. It's 99.999% accurate. The odd occasion it's going to make a mistake, and you know they're always high profile when they do. But then we got VAR, and you know, for me, the genie's out the bottle. We're not going to get rid of VAR, but it's killing the game. I think from a viewpoint of sort of pace and from engagement, I think the stadium experience is pretty rank. But as a Borough fan, you know, I've not had many experiences of VAR in the stadium. You have as an Everton and Borough fan, but I think it's killing the game. I don't know what your view is on it.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm of the camp where I do see its merit, and I do look at it sometimes and think, yes, it's a good thing, but they're not using it to the in the right way.
Mm,
So we've got to the point at Everton now where we still mechanically celebrate, and then after about 5 seconds, it instantly kicks in. Oh yeah, sorry, we've forgotten. There'll be a VAR check, and
mm.
on nearly every single Everton goal, there's a VAR check. And frustratingly, sometimes it goes on for what feels like hours, and then it comes out that they're actually checking 6, 7 moves back, and it's like, well, hang on a second, you weren't checking 6, 7 moves back before the goal went in,
Yeah.
so why are you suddenly checking that now? So the issue is, was there an infringement or an offside in the penalty box? And now you've gone back to almost where the move started.
Mm.
Crazy. That's not clear and obvious. I'm not quite sure when that creeped in.
Well, I think they're re-refereeing games as a result of VAR,
Yeah,
and clear and obvious is what it was designed for. Okay, but going back, it almost strikes me that looking to find something to overrule, you know, to say, well,
yeah,
actually, there was a tackle on the halfway line, 6 tackles before the ball went out to the winger, who then put it into the box.
yeah,
And he might have been offside, he might not have been, but there's no clear and obvious on 6 tackles back, for example. And the thing that gets me with VAR, certainly in England, is it's well, in football, first of all. VAR type technology works really well in other sports. Rugby league, for example, it
mm,
works really well. It's worked for years and years in that, and it works well. But then we introduce VAR into football, and they go arrogantly, "Oh, we'll do our own thing. We'll do something that's a bit shit, but you know, it works elsewhere. But we'll do something a bit shit." And then in the FA in England, it worked. We've been to Germany a number of times. I watch German football. I watch Italian football highlights and stuff. And it works well in Germany. It works well in Italy. It worked really well in Russia in the World Cup, and it worked pretty well in Qatar as well. But then the FA do their own thing as well. They'll go, well, we won't use that system. We'll use the FA's system, which is just a bit shit. I don't get why we're not using a universal system around the world, the one that works, because the World Cup in 2018 at Russia introduced VAR to a big tournament for the first time, and it was almost flawless. It was
yeah.
quick. It was
It was.
easy. It's the speed of decision making that gets me, does my head in.
I agree with you. That's what everyone wants. It should be a very simple check, and it should be over something that's quite innocuous. You shouldn't have to analyze everything to the nth degree where you're putting grids on the pitch and going back 3, 4, 5, 6 moves. It's almost like, in terms of what you were saying about re-refereeing the game, it's almost saying, let's make it perfect. Let's make it so it's flawless. Well, football isn't like that. And I think
No.
every fan would accept that if someone might have had if a tackle's marginal in terms of, was it a bit too heavy? Could it have been a free kick? Was someone slightly offside at the start of a move? Really? If a goal then happens 7, 8 moves down the line, is it not just a genuine goal? There's been multiple occasions where the team could have prevented it. So has that really given an advantage? I
Mm.
would say it hasn't. And I've heard a few things where I think Mike Dean came out at some point once and admitted that he didn't give a decision because the referee had a hard time all the way through the match. And it's like, come on, seriously?
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. And I think fundamentally for me, Nick, on this, it should really be checking some of the simple things. So I don't really get the clear and obvious. For me, I think if the referee's made a decision on a goal and you can see that an error's been made, and sometimes VAR would say, well, we can't step in because it's not clear and obvious. Well,
Mm,
actually, I think there's times where the VAR should step in. I think where it adds value is correcting something that is wrong. I
mm,
remember there was a goal against a couple of seasons ago, first game of the season against Fulham at Goodison. We got a goal disallowed because it was deemed the referee deemed that Tarkovsky had fouled Leno. He hadn't. He literally hadn't. Leno was all over the back of Tarkovsky.
mm.
Tarkovsky hadn't fouled him. He hadn't backed it to him. He hadn't infringed him. And Michael Keane just tapped it in for a goal. It was a perfectly legal goal. It was overprotection of the goalkeeper. After the match, other officials said that was a goal. There was nothing wrong with that goal.
Mm.
Leno came out, realised he'd gone too far, dived all over Tarkovsky. He was just stood there. There was nothing Tarkovsky could do. But there couldn't have been any intervention. It was too late. That would have massively changed our game. And that's
Mm.
3 points to a team that season we were struggling.
I like the idea though that you get an apology letter on the Monday from the VAR
Yeah.
people and say we're really sorry, but because that must be really helpful to you, mustn't it?
Oh, well, yeah, Man City 3 seasons ago, 9 minutes on VAR to overrule what was a clear pen against Man City when it had hit the arm, and the
Mm,
referee said, and VAR said, no, it hit here. It didn't, and it
mm.
was an absolute stonewall pen where we could have got a 1-1, and that point could have been huge to us that season. It does affect. Like the goal line thing with Chef Wednesday and Villa, it can massively affect how a season pans out for the team.
Sheffield United, but we'll move on from that. That's okay.
Sorry, yes, sorry,
That's okay. Only because we'll get comments. That's
yes,
all.
we will.
What I would say as well in terms of that, when you talk about VAR and decisions, etc., I think it also stops the referees. You mentioned there about Mike Dean protecting a fellow referee, which is criminal, really. But more importantly, a lot of Premier League referees drop down to what they might consider to be bigger games in the Championship, and they've had decision making engineered out of them. So when they're refereeing and officiating at the Championship level and there's no VAR, they're almost not making decisions at all. They seem because they've had it engineered out of them because they think, well, in the Premier League, if I don't make a decision and something happens, VAR will sort it out for me. When they come down to the Championship with no VAR, so the standard of refereeing that they bring to the table when it comes to the Championship, because of the VAR kind of reliance that they've had, makes them poor referees. They used to be great. We used to get a Premier League referee dropping down. You think, oh, at least the games will be refereed well. Now it's actually worse because they've lost the ability to make a
Yeah,
proper decision, if that makes sense.
yeah, I would agree. I do think there is a bit of a fallback on reliance of VAR to step in, but then in contradiction to that, VAR's not stepping in for me sometimes when it absolutely needs to.
Mm,
So it's frustrating sometimes when they'll go back and analyze goals that are stonewall goals and look at a way almost to cancel them out.
yeah.
Um, and there's other times where they overanalyze things to the nth degree. So again, Everton Man United last season, 2-2. We get the penalty. Ashley Young goes down. Referee gives a pen. VAR step in, and they only look at Harry Maguire's challenge, which was correctly not a pen based on that. What they didn't look at was the secondary element, which was Delit pulling Ashley Young's shirt on more than one occasion.
Mm,
What didn't help was, unfortunately, Ashley Young going to ground like he just skydived out of a plane,
yeah.
which was so over exaggerated that you were never going to get a pen because you made it look so obvious that you'd just gone down.
Mm,
I don't like players simulating going down, and I don't like it when they go down and they probably could have stayed on their feet. What I will say, and I said it at the time to when we were discussing it in the ground, is in that situation where you're being hindered and your shirt deliberately being pulled back, and it was properly being pulled back on more than one occasion,
mm.
you have every right to go down because it's almost like, well, if he'd gone down and just flumped to the ground, chances are that wouldn't have got overruled. But VAR didn't even look at that element. And retrospectively, they did and still said, oh, we think that was soft. Well, it was only soft because Ashley Young made it look so deliberate in terms of how he went down.
It
But they
is a
missed
sep-
it completely and they got involved. So if they hadn't got involved at all, it would have been a pen.
It's a separate issue on that in terms of the diving. If you get pulled backwards, you don't dive forwards.
No, exactly. You almost just, you'd almost better just drop into the ground and
Yeah.
say, look, I've been hindered here. Don't
Mm.
make a song and dance of diving to the floor.
The other thing I'd like to think about on that basis, nothing to do with VAR particularly, but it is about sort of penalty situations like that. I would rather stay on the feet and get a shot off. Just take a shot for Christ's sake. If you're looking for a penalty, you should be looking for the back of the net when you're in that position most
Yeah,
often. No.
yeah. I would agree. In that
Mm,
particular instance I was describing, that wasn't possible. But I agree. There's plenty of times where you see players go down where you just think, actually, just stay on your feet. And
mm,
then bizarrely, there's times where you see players actually do the honest thing and try and stay on their feet and go for goal, and it works against them. And you think, God, if you just drop to the floor, you'd have probably got a
mm.
pen. But that then comes into all the integrity of the game. Is it being played for the right sportsmanship, and a whole can of worms, mate.
Whole podcast episode, mate, further down
Yeah,
the line.
whole
That's that.
podcast episode.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting one as well, though, because I looked at a VAR decision a few seasons ago at Everton, at Newcastle at St James's, where there was an incident, and it was to do with Andre Gomez and Callum Wilson, and he got a pen. But bizarrely, he was right on the edge of the 18-yard box, back to goal, no, nowhere near the goal in terms of would have been able to get a goal, and he gets a pen, and it was like a really scruffy. I think it was something like he just got nudged in the back and he went down. It's like, but how is that a penalty? Because he's nowhere near the goal. He's got his
Mm,
back to the goal. There's players all around him. How on earth does that become a goal scoring opportunity from
yeah.
there? So soft, and VAR gave it. It was like,
Mm.
that's bonkers.
Well,
So it's always going to be contentious, isn't it? You're gonna. I just think my personal thing on VAR is I think it should be a light touch. I think the referee should be allowed to referee the game and told to referee the game, and it'll only intervene where it absolutely needs to, not because it has to.
totally agree. And I think I want to talk about rules really, because there's nothing wrong with VAR as a technology. The technology is
No,
absolutely fine. It's the actual interpretation of the rules, isn't it? So let's talk about the one that really pisses me off the most. And it really is. I mean, we talk about, well, there's two really. How can a body part from which you can't score, hand or, elbow or whatever, how can you be offside by a hand or an elbow, first of all? And what happened to giving the attacker the benefit of the doubt? Offside by, you've got a fringe on your haircut, whatever. It's absolutely ridiculous, the offside rule, first of all. My view on offside rule should be clear daylight. If there's clear daylight between attacker and defender, then it's offside. If you're level-ish and, body parts exceptional, accepting from that, then you just play on. But the rule itself is wrong, not the VAR, isn't it? Offside
I
is
agree.
absolutely bonkers.
I absolutely agree. I find it staggering that we're measuring toe lengths and the elbow, or me, I've got a big nose, or someone's nose.
Yeah.
It's I absolutely agree with you. I also don't agree with this 50-50, half a man past the last man. For me, that's, well, come on, that comes into 50-50. If
Yeah.
he's slightly ahead of you, you've still got a good chance of getting in there and getting the ball back.
Mm.
And I absolutely think that would take away all the grids, all the reference points,
Yeah.
all the umming and ahhing. Most of the time when it's that finite as well, you haven't got any of the teams complaining. The opposition don't complain, apart from they do that mechanical, don't they? Turn around, put their hand up in hope
Yeah.
that someone gives it as an offside, just because they do that mechanically, not because they probably think it is.
Mm.
I think that would make it much more refreshing. I do think you should give advantage to the attacker, because they've obviously created a move to the point where that player's managed to get in behind to an advantageous point. So
Mm.
if they're absolutely, like you said, full man past with clear daylight, no arguments then, is there? No one's going to argue about it and criticise it, are they?
No, there was a great goal score by Patrick Bamford, Leeds, right? A few seasons ago. Forgive me, Leeds fans listening, I can't remember who it was against. It was a superb move. It was a ball passed into Bamford. He had his back to the goal, probably, halfway into the opposition half. He spun, he passed it out to a guy on out wide, and then he ran in and he pointed to where he wanted the ball. The ball came in pinpoint to exactly where he pointed, and he put it in the back of the net, like a beautiful, flowing, nice. You watch that and you're purring, going, "What a great goal!" Even though it's Leeds, and
Yeah,
I'm not a
I
massive
remember
Leeds
the
fan,
goal. I remember the goal you mean. I
and he
totally
was
agree.
he was offside because his finger was offside. The finger he was pointing where he wanted the bloody
Yeah,
ball. How does that improve football?
it destroys football. It's taking out just the sheer joy and flow of the game.
Mm.
It just should be left to flow. I think every honest football fan, particularly those who go and watch the games themselves and are there, will accept that the odd mistake will be made, but they'd much rather accept how it is without the intervention, knowing
Mm.
that I would say we all know that over a season, most of the decisions will probably go your way. The
Yeah.
odd one won't. We get that. But won't they always say, you win some, you lose some every season. Every team gets its howlers. Every team gets some they shouldn't. It does even itself out. My personal take is I'd much rather not have to suddenly stop celebrating, wait, and then overanalyze it, and then look to the box above us and go, is it? Because they're looking at the screens on the monitor and checking it that way. I don't mind it being in the game. Like you said, it's great technology if it's used the right way.
The question I've got about the in-stadium experience, as I say, Championship, we don't have it very often. I've been in a few stadiums where we've had VAR, but so let's say you score, your natural instinct. I'll tell you one example. Actually, we played Man United in the FA Cup 2021 away. We had 10,000 Borough fans. It was one of those games that was the spawniest game ever. Ronaldo missed a penalty after about 8 minutes. They went 1-0 up. Then Bruno hit the post when it would have been. He had an open goal. Our keeper rolled it out to him. He had no one to beat. Keeper's off. Off. He couldn't have missed. He hit the post. And I said to my lad, I said, we're going to win this
Yeah.
anyway. We got a goal. It went across to Duncan Watmore.
What more?
Gets the ball in the box. He might as well have been playing basketball, right? He was bouncing the ball
Oh,
with his basketball. He slid it into a clearly offside Matt Crooks, and Crooks put it in the back post. So we're all up, 10,000 Borough fans celebrating away, 1-1 at Old Trafford, bounced up and down, fantastic. And I just said to my lad, enjoy this because they're going to chalk it off. And they didn't chalk it off. And it's like, okay, that's weird. So, but what? They were checking VAR, and the in-stadium experience would have been, well, it's been disallowed, so whatever. But do you celebrate twice when it's given in your favour? I don't know what the protocol is. You celebrate
yes.
when you natural get the goal. Do you
Yeah.
celebrate again when it's confirmed?
Yeah. So your natural instinct is to celebrate. As soon as we score, because I've not experienced it much at Borough, so I can only give you an Everton
What,
perspective on
scoring?
Borough's. Well, score, no, the actual VAR experience. Well, sometimes scoring, it can be a bit lean on both fronts. But your natural instinct is to celebrate. And there's some goals you just know aren't going to get VAR checked. You're fine. But your natural instinct is to celebrate. And then all of a sudden, after a few seconds, you suddenly go, oh, yeah, they'll probably check this.
The
And
check
then
them
they do.
all. The,
And
the check
they
them all. Dom, every goal is
do
checked.
they?
Every goal is checked. Yeah.
Oh, I
So
didn't know that. So that's a new one on me.
I think you thought it was just Everton, mate. I promise you now, every goal is checked.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know they checked everything. I thought they checked it in certain instances. So I'm corrected there. But yeah, so it then pops up on the screen. It just says checking for possible offside or foul, etc. What they don't do is they don't then put up what VAR are looking at on the screens, which they could do, and they
Mm,
could actually maybe what they started doing last season, which they haven't done before, is they then provide a reason why it's either something's been given or it's been chalked off. Very brief, only a
mm,
few words. Sometimes it might help if the referee maybe because like in women's football, I've seen it where they come on and tell why the decision's been overruled or why they've given it.
yeah.
I quite like that idea, just to put it to bed, and maybe you go, yeah, okay, I understand. Because sometimes it's not until you get on and watch it on the rerun that you think, oh yeah, I can totally see why that was chalked off, but you don't
Mm.
see it at the time in the ground.
Okay. Conscious of time, and we talked about rule change. So we've talked about technology, goal line, we talked about VAR as the technology. We talked about the offside rule. I'm just going to throw three words in here. Handball, it's bollocks. Talk to me.
Oh, Nick, in what context? In what context?
The handball rule and what is interpreted as handball for me is just absolute
Yes,
nonsense, right?
yeah,
It used to be, and it makes me sound like an old fart, right? But it used to be ball to hand. If you deliberately moved your ball in the direction, your hand in the direction, God forbid, move your hand in the direction of the ball, then the reality was it's an offside, it's a handball. But everything else now is it's grazed your finger, it's touched your elbow. It didn't even change the trajectory of the ball, but we're looking to give that as a handball. The handball law is a joke. Nobody understands it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I'm glad they stamped out that ridiculous thing of where it hits your hand in the penalty. If you're jumping up for a ball like Grealish in the FA Cup final against United, where
Hmm.
he jumped up for a challenge, it hit his hand, penalty. I'm glad they took that out because that would have been the end of football for me because that was just awful.
Have they taken that out?
Yeah, well, they claim they have. Where it kind of it was one of the way you go for a 50-50 challenge. If you're up like that and it hits your hand, they were giving them as penalties, weren't they? Even though it hadn't changed, like you said, it hadn't changed the direct trajectory of the ball. There's no advantage to any team or the team that where it hit his hand. But it ruined City still ended up winning the cup final, didn't they? But it ruined that first half because it gave them a goal they didn't deserve.
They're still doing that. They're still giving penalties, still giving free kicks, but penalties particularly for handball where there is absolutely no intent whatsoever, and it's grazed someone's elbow, grazed someone's, even sometimes your shoulder. There was one last season, I can't remember who it was. It grazed the end of the hand was down. It grazed the end of the fingers. The ball didn't move a millimeter off its trajectory, and it was given as a penalty. They haven't changed that, Dom. They haven't changed it at all. Even when you
Wow.
jump, hang on, even when you jump with your hands up. What you're supposed to do with your hands, right? So they still give, if it touches the hand in the box, it's a penalty, and it's absolute bollocks. It just spoils the game for me.
Well, that was a specific rule, though, wasn't it? Around if you're in coming together in a challenge and it hits your hand, it's deemed handball, even though
Mm,
there's no deliberate intent to handball it. I think what you're talking about is where it's blurred now, in that they're deeming anything from the elbow down is classed as handball.
mm,
Therefore, if they then deem that it's hit that part of the body and has
mm,
it had an impact, then they'll give a pen. What I would agree with you on is the interpretation of what advantage has been had by
yeah,
where it's hit that player. That I do disagree with, and I do think it. And again, opposition teams play on it, don't they? In terms of where it's hit, and they're trying to get a penalty.
yeah,
Again, that needs to be. I do think there's also a lot of, in terms of the rules, that needs to be stamped out in terms of teams pleading for free kicks and pens and stuff where it's hit an element of the body where
yeah.
actually they deep down know it hasn't had any impact in terms of
Mm.
advantage played. So yes, I agree. There's still decisions like that where you look at it and think that's not a penalty. That's soft, awful.
If I smash the ball at you from 3 feet away in the box, it hits your hand. Um, I'm going to get a penalty for that because that's how it works, and there was no intent whatsoever. Sometimes you got your back to the ball, it hits your hand when you got your back to it. Where's the intent of that? I'm absolutely on a mission to get the handball rule changed because it's the rule. It is interpretation, but it's the rule itself. Now, I just want to come up with one more because I'm just conscious of this. Have you seen about the new penalty rule that they're thinking of bringing in next season
Yeah,
in the World Cup? Okay, where the ball is dead as soon as it's kicked. So, for example, you take a penalty and the keeper saves it and it rebounds out, like Chloe Kelly the other night against
yeah,
Italy. You can't put the rebound in because the ball is dead. It hits the post, the ball is dead. Um, Wenger and his IFAB mates need a strong look in the mirror to look at that and go, how the hell does that improve the football experience? You're not telling me Chloe Kelly's tapping kind of rebound from the goalkeeper panning out to her against Italy the other night wasn't a great moment in football in that game for the Lionesses, but yet the bloody decision makers under Wenger and IFAB are happy enough to say, yeah, let's stop that. Let's spoil that. I mean, that the ball is in until the ball is not in. And
I agree.
if it bounces off
Oh,
the keeper or the post,
that's the point I was going to make. The ball's in. So correct me if I'm wrong, and I might have misinterpreted this. If the keeper saves it and parries it, is
Yeah.
that also classed as a dead ball? So
Yeah.
is it classed as an isolated instance? So say the goalkeeper saves it, they're not allowed to then. Is it so? It's both. So it's not
Yeah.
just if it hits the post. It's if the goalkeeper parries it. It's like an isolated incident. I think the whole thing again is that's shocking. I agree with you entirely. The ball isn't out; it's in play. So they
Mm.
might argue and justify it and say, well, the penalty itself is a set situation. It's not, the game isn't in free play. It's
Mm.
a set isolated incident. Therefore, we'll treat it as an isolated segment. So that penalty is that penalty. But again, you're taking out a bit of the drama and the joy, aren't you? Because the whole point of it is someone could take a howler of a penalty or an amazing penalty, and the keeper might make an easy save or an outstanding save, but there's still that jeopardy there.
Yeah.
In other words, it's still there all to play for. And I completely agree with you. Chloe Kelly's penalty of the day was actually not a bad penalty.
Mm.
Good pace, half height. Keeper made a good save. Back out into the area of play. For me, it's fair game. It adds to the drama and the jeopardy of what football is. That's what it should be all about. Absolutely.
But if you're Arsene Wenger on the IFAB and FIFA rule making committee, and you've been a manager at the senior high level that you've been as Wenger, how the hell can you sit in a room with these absolute moronic decision makers who've probably never played football or not been involved in football other than from an administrative point of view and sit there and go, yeah, that's a good idea, because
Yeah.
he's got a responsibility to football in general. I was always a big fan of how Arsene Wenger's teams played football.
Yeah.
I thought, he always wanted to play expansive, winning, great to watch football. And people like him now have got a responsibility to it maintain that level. But you start taking out the penalty sort of rebound rule. How many penalties are saved by the keeper and parried back out? Probably maybe a third. Um,
I think over the global population of football over a season, that'll be an awful lot of goals missed,
mm,
that you no longer have. For me, I think it comes into, and I agree with you. I respected Arsene Wenger a lot as a manager. Loved his teams, loved the way he played. And I think if he was still a manager, he'd hate this decision. Bizarrely,
yeah,
personally, I think what it comes down to, Nick, is sometimes when you're not actually involved on the everyday side of the game and you're looking at things sometimes inward, you start doing this unnecessary tinkering. Oh, wouldn't it be nice if we do this? Do you think that would benefit? What what's it serving? Who is it benefiting? It's not benefiting the fans. It just becomes a dead ball situation. And if the missus is like, oh, okay, and you want that element of, oh, hopefully it'll bounce back out and we'll score it. That's brilliant when that happens, because you're always on pins anyway when there's a pen, and you're like,
yeah.
oh, here we go. And if they miss it and then get it off the rebound, it's brilliant. If you take that out of the game, it's just something else, just a tiny little thing again that you're stripping away from the beauty of the game and the fan experience, aren't you?
I think the decision makers in the game are trying to lose the heart and soul of football. And you look at again, it was clearly obvious on the Chloe Kelly thing. The crowd went bonkers when that rebound went in, and
Yeah,
you're taking that away from them. And the final thing I'd say is it feels a bit like VAR re-engineering and re-refereeing the games, going back to find reasons not to allow a goal. Football's about the joy of your team scoring, whether it's scoring a second, a third, a fourth, or a last minute winner, or a penalty to get an equaliser, or whatever it might be. But the joy of football is about the joy of scoring goals and celebrating that. Now, every single rule that I can see that's been brought in, apart from goal line technology, has been designed by, as far as I can see, to reduce the joy and to
yeah,
actually reduce the number of goals that are actually accredited, because it's like we've found a reason not to do that with VAR. We've found a reason not to do that with a really dodgy offside decision. We found a really reason not to do it with the worst handball decision you've ever seen. And now we've given you a penalty, but you have to score first time. Otherwise,
yeah.
the
How are
game.
you going to take that away from you? I think I agree with you. I can't disagree with any of the points you've just made. I think they're really sound, valid points, and I think I go back to, I do think it's a misinterpretation of what you're supposed to do with technology that's available to you. For me, it's everything should be about a light touch, and it should all be around letting the game be the game and letting it flow.
Mm,
It should be trying to correct really blatant, blunders where actually there's been a miscarriage of justice to that team at that particular
Mm.
point where you could just pull it back and go, actually, that really shouldn't be a goal. But um, I agree. It feels like I think that I made the point earlier. It's almost like we want everything to be perfect. Therefore, if we
Mm.
intervene and we can make this sterile, clean
Yeah,
version of the game, no one wants a sterile, clean version of the game. Everyone
no,
accepts that football. If it had never been brought in, nobody would be complaining. Yes, you go, oh look at that, it's offside. That referee should have spotted that. But at the bottom line is, apart from the odd one where you think the referee really should have spotted it, a lot of them, in hindsight, you accept the referee's got a really tough job, and
yeah.
it just is what it is, and you move on and you go, and that's healthy for the game.
We used to talk about referees in the pub after the game making bad
Yeah,
decisions. Now everybody just talks about VAR ruining the
yeah,
game after the game in the pub, don't they?
yeah.
So we've just shifted the emphasis towards technology when actually it's the interpretation, it's the rules. So the last thing I want to think about is this. I want to leave an impassioned plea for anyone who's unlikely from IFAB or Arsene Wenger's crew to be watching this or listening to this. Leave the game alone once you've sorted out the handball rule. That's what I'd like to finish on, Don. What do you reckon?
I would agree, and I think if you're going to, my parting comment would be, if you want to tinker with the rules of the game or technology, get the offside um, rule changed in terms of clear and obvious daylight. That would be a better thing to debate
Yeah.
and get right in the game than stopping someone scoring a rebound from a penalty.
That's a great point about offside, to be fair. I want handball changing. You want offside changing. We want them to leave the rules alone. We want them to move on. So I think that's enough about technology and rule changes, shall we say. There's a lot in there. We did say we're going to talk about Galacticos. Are they all that? So let's move on to Galacticos. And the reason that so we chose this as a subject, really. PSG this season have had a tremendous season. I know they didn't win the FIFA Club World Cup that we weren't that impressed with as a tournament in an earlier episode, but they've won everything this season. I think they've done the treble. They certainly won the Champions League by absolutely smashing teams left, right, and centre, beating everyone from England. I know Villa might say that they ran them close, and Arsenal might say they're the best team in Europe because they almost beat them. But ultimately, PSG were sensational, sensational to watch, sensational performances. But that's without Kylian Mbappe, and it just made me think, particularly, are you better without a load of superstars because you've got a team that's cohesive and well drilled, well coached, and focused. So I want to talk about that really. So the first question I've got, I guess we will get into the PSG stuff and stuff, is what's your definition of a Galactico? What is a Galactico? Because I had a really detailed, deep conversation with a client of mine. It did involve beer, talking about Galacticos, and he said, "Well, what do you think a Galactico is? What's your version? What's your view of what a Galactico is?"
Well, personally, I think it's just marketing and gimmickry. It's just Real Madrid, Florentino Perez, who came up with this term Galacticos, which ultimately is just Spanish for galaxies, isn't it? It's superstar.
Yeah,
It's just getting together a team of superstars, and I suppose Galactico in Spanish gives it this kind of giant, almost like this visceral picture of this team coming onto the pitch like gladiatorial knights, who can rule and conquer everything and dominate the game. I think that's how they wanted it to come across. Real Madrid being this all-conquering team, and we've now got all-conquering players. So that's where it really stemmed from, and it kind of formed a blueprint for other teams to try and emulate that or want to copy it.
my argument with this guy, client of mine in a bar, was about kind of the definition of a Galactico. And my view is, and I know the definition is about
Yeah,
superstar and galaxies, etc., but in literal terms, my view of a Galactico is at the time that you sign them, they are perceived to be a world-beating game changer. Which means that every other club in the world at that time would have wanted to sign them.
yeah,
So the argument then went, well, are Iniesta and Xavi Galacticos? I said they were never Galacticos in the sense that because they came through the ranks, they weren't signed when they were at the peak of their sort of fame and PR and all that kind of thing. So we then argued about the fact that I said Ronaldo's always going to be a Galactico. And Messi, when he moved to PSG, was a Galactico, but he wasn't a Galactico when he was at Barcelona because he developed from being 16, 17 through the ranks. Galacticos are the people who you buy, who drop into a team, who are ready-made PR machines. So you like see your Beckhams, your Figos, your
Yeah,
Zidanes, your
yes, yeah,
Ronaldos, etc. And that
yeah.
was just my interpretation. And he said, anyone who's a great footballer is a Galactico. I said, well, not unless they move clubs. They're not.
No, and it's a blurring of the term, isn't it? Because Galactico on its if you take what it actually means, yes, it's superstar, but as a Galactico, it kind of manifests as it feels like something else, doesn't it? It
Mm,
feels like you are taking something amazing to drop it into your team.
mm,
And I agree, you wouldn't necessarily use the term for players that have been at a club, all their career. You'd
mm.
probably just term them as a superstar,
World
brilliant
class.
player, world class player. Um, and I don't think the process worked. I don't think what they did worked at all. It didn't work because if you actually look at the success of what it achieved, Real Madrid had a really lean spell during that time. They only won one La Liga in 5 years and no Champions League.
Yeah.
So, look at the players they had. Incredible players, incredible talent, but I don't really think they actually gelled that well as a team, to be honest.
Sold a lot of shirts though.
Marketing wise, it was unbelievable. In terms of money making, absolutely amazing. Um, but I'd actually, and it slightly tweaks the subject a bit, but, yes, the actual homegrown players might have been a bit perturbed by that because I think probably one of the best players at Real at that time was Raúl, but
Mm,
you wouldn't have classed him as a Galactico because he was a homegrown talent, but he was probably their best player.
mm.
But then you can't argue with the quality of the players they brought in and their genius individually. But I remember watching them at the time thinking, as a team, they weren't all that. They weren't all that successful. Not
Yeah.
really. I think everyone remembers them individually rather than what they achieved as a team or how they played as a team.
That is a great point. We remember them individually. We remember them like, wow, they've got them, they've got them, they've got them. That's
Yes,
brilliant. And but like you say, on the pitch, they weren't all that when it came to the
they
success
weren't.
that they were looking for. What I was going to say then was in terms of PSG, they had Mbappe, they had Neymar, they had Messi, and they didn't get anywhere near winning the Champions League, right? So they now have none of those three, and they've got a coherent team. They've got some young players coming through. They've got some brilliant, brilliant sort of fast-flowing football that they
Yeah.
play. Um, so would you say that the model for Galacticos is dead in the water?
Yeah, I don't think there was ever a model for it. I didn't agree with it at the time. It was just a big club wanting to be even bigger and greedier and say we can do this and you can't. Look how amazing we are. But then I'm not a massive fan of Real Madrid. Really, I admire what they've done. They've had some exceptional players, and individually, I love watching how they can play. But really, it's just God, it must get boring being a Real Madrid fan, and all you wanting to do is win the Champions League all the time. It's just there's more to
Mm,
football. So yeah, I never agree with the model in the first place. I think it's wrong. It's all that's wrong with football, and I think the PSG element now proves that because I was never really a big PSG fan. I didn't like how they went about trying to create this team.
mm,
There's lots of issues there, owned by a country again, trying to dominate a league and bulldoze their way to success.
mm,
When actually their philosophy changed 18 months, 2 years ago, where they said they were going to start promoting proper homegrown Parisian talent and
mm,
try and bring in young players and then blend that with some experience. Also, add a very good coach. I mean, let's take
yeah.
nothing away. Luis Enrique is a superb coach and seems like a really thoroughly decent individual.
Mm,
And I think he's one of the key pointers to their success. But I think you take away a lot of the big names, and I think that for me naturally then breeds a better team mentality. I'm not saying that's always going to be the case because let's face it, Messi seemed to work really well with his team at Barcelona. But then the difference was They all came through the ranks together.
Mm.
But then add Suarez and Neymar. But I think that worked because they all seemed to get on and be good mates together, particularly those front three. And I think everyone else behind it either got on with them as well or wasn't bothered about the limelight. So as a team, they always put the team first. So
But
that's
they
why it
only
worked for Barca.
but they only brought one or two in, whereas Real Madrid were bringing in five and
Five,
six, weren't
six,
they? And that
seven.
must be
Yeah.
hard to manage those egos in the
Yeah.
changing room, mustn't it? You know, you've only got to look at Gareth Bale, haven't you? Gareth Bale, world class, absolute Galactico in his time, but because he was at the same time as Ronaldo, there's only so much air you can breathe, isn't there? Really, and
Yeah.
you know, on
Yeah.
that basis,
I agree. I think he actually struggled with it as well. I don't think looking at the type of person Gareth Bale seems to be, and again, we're all speculating now. We don't know these people, but the way they come across you, everyone has their opinion of what you think someone's like. It doesn't seem to me that he particularly enjoyed that atmosphere and that limelight. It looked to me like he was just an exceptionally good footballer that wanted to play football.
yeah.
And even though he had tremendous success at Madrid, I he probably doesn't think that. And people might think I'm crazy here, but I actually look back at Bale's career at Madrid with some frustration and sadness because I think he was such a player. I'd love to have seen him perhaps shine somewhere else. I think he was suffocated at Madrid a lot of the time and really struggled to show himself.
I don't think he felt loved, is what I'd say. He looked
No,
to the outside. He wasn't loved. He was always trying to prove himself against Ronaldo, and he shouldn't have to, should he?
no. And then, but you just look at the talent that he was and the things he was capable of doing. I mean, that goal against Liverpool in the Champions League. I watched that back recently, and it's just like, you had, how on earth did he manage to do that? That
Yeah.
just showed that sometimes football is about those individual moments, and only certain players can do it. And I just think I sometimes wonder with Gareth whether he retired early because he was just so fed up with the game. I mean, he
Mm,
clearly made his money long ago, but he looks like a player that maybe might have fallen out of love with actually playing. I think he
think
still
so.
loves the game. He's commentating, he's looking to get back into it in ownership or whatever. Whether that's right or wrong is another podcast. But um, I think the point I'm trying to make is sometimes you think being at a club like that and being branded as a Galactico or being in the limelight and the expectation plus the Spanish media didn't like him, did they?
No.
So I think that can be destructive. I often sometimes think what a career he might have had if he'd maybe had a few years at Madrid and then gone somewhere else.
Mm.
But maybe it's hard to leave Madrid and go elsewhere. I don't know. But yeah,
When
I
you
know.
talk about that goal, you're not talking about the one that carries through in his own net. You talk about the goal.
The goal. The
Yeah,
goal. Yeah.
yeah.
What a
Okay.
genius goal. Yeah.
I'm thinking of time on the podcast. I'm just going to leave you a one thought process around Galacticos versus a team, and we're talking here Real Madrid of the early 2000s versus prime Barcelona 2009 2011. So Zidane, Figo, Beckham, Roberto Carlos, Ronaldo versus Messi, Xavi, Iniesta, Busquets, Piqué, Puyol, Henri, Eto'o. I'm back in Barcelona every day of the week and on a Sunday.
I am. Every day of the week. They'd win hands down. Yeah, because they were a cohesive team
Yeah.
and their quality of football was way above what Madrid's was.
Mm.
You know, I would agree with you. I think 9 times out of 10, they would have they'd beat them and be more successful. And they were a joy to watch. I loved watching Spanish football when they were at their peak. They were just glorious.
You just made a noise that football fans make when they watch great football. It's
Yeah,
inherent, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah. I mean, Iniesta, Xavi, Busquets,
Mm,
brilliant players that just did simple things, but also did very complex things that made them look very simple. Almost
mm,
just sometimes you weren't even aware of the influence they were having on games, but just how they read the game,
mm.
how they made the game so easy for their front players, and how they've just did their job so effortlessly. Busquets is just a Rolls Royce of a
Yeah.
player, so amazing. So yeah,
So on that basis, we're not big fans of Galacticos. So when Middlesbrough announced today that they're in for Ronaldo for the end of his career, we'll just say, we're not bothered, thanks, wouldn't we?
I heard he was thinking of coming to the Borough. Actually, yeah,
He likes a Parmo, from what I understand. Anyway,
yeah,
on
he
that
does.
subject, we need to finish because I'm conscious of time. Okay,
Yeah,
we can talk all day, as indeed we do when we meet.
yeah.
So that was technology and rule changes. Galacticos, are they all that? Next time in the Half and Half Scarf Football Podcast, We're going to be talking about ticket prices and annoying people in stadiums because there's a lot of people who annoy Dom and I when it comes to stadiums. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to watch this on YouTube and share. If you're on LinkedIn, there's a LinkedIn group called the Half and Half Scarf Football Podcast. It's an open group. We'd love you to join. If you want to join, please feel free to do so. And we'd love to have you in there. A bit of additional content coming into the LinkedIn group. And we've got some news on our logo and on where the platforms that we're going to be using shortly are going to come. But that's for another day. So thanks again, Dom. We'll catch up with you soon.
Cheers, Nick. Will do. Enjoyed it.
Cheers.